Hello folks and welcome back to the paddock here at Spa-Francorchamps after the 2020 Belgian Grand Prix. The paddock pack-up is in full swing, the debrief is in full swing. Headlines are being written after what has been a weekend to forget for Scuderia Ferrari.
Those guys have got a lot of talking to do tonight. They've got a lot of homework to do, as we often say, before the next race in Monza, because this was, quite frankly, a horrific weekend for Ferrari. They wouldn't have come here with hopes of winning or getting podiums, but they would have hoped to get good points. But they were struggling to get out of Q1, and they were nowhere near the points on Sunday afternoon.
No, they weren't. They said they were expecting to struggle, but I don't think they were expecting to be the only team here in Spa that didn't improve on their 2019 pace. Not only did they not improve, they actually got considerably worse, considerably slower.
Exactly. Like most of the time, Formula One teams from year to year get better. Ferrari on FP2 times were 1.3 seconds slower than last year. 1.3 seconds, and that's just not the engine.
No, and this is the thing, everybody improved, including those with Ferrari power units. Haas were better than they were last year. Alfa Romeo were better than they were last year. And in the Grand Prix itself, we could see that Ferrari struggling to keep pace, struggling to overtake, even with DRS on the Kemmel straight, on the likes of the Alfa Romeos and on the Haas F1 team cars. So as you say, it's not just the power unit, it's the chassis as well. And try as they might between Friday to Saturday, they changed the downforce levels they were running on the car. If anything, it made it worse. And for the very first time in this turbo hybrid era, it really looked like they weren't going to get a car out of Q1.
And that, for a team like Ferrari, is just simply not acceptable. Binotto was talking about how they feel that they couldn't get the tyres into the window this weekend, and that was part of the problem. And that was because last year they had such a massive engine gain on everyone else. This year they've lost all that advantages that they've had. They've had to do other things to try and make up for that lack of performance, and in trying to do that, it's actually made the car even worse.
Yeah, not happy times. One man who's been looking at it in depth is technical analyst Sam Collins, and this is what he had to say about it, his thoughts as put forward on F1 Live, the post-race show.
I mean, difficult's an understatement. It was a disaster. Let's be frank, it was an unmitigated disaster from front to end for Ferrari. They had pit stop woes, something went wrong in the power unit department. I think they had to plug in the car. And you know, you just look at this. I mean, AlphaTauri, that is Italy's second Formula One team. It used to be Minardi, blitzing past the Ferrari on a straight. They've got no engine power. The car's actually slower around this circuit than last year's car, where everybody else is quicker. I mean, there's lots of rumours as to why that is, but it's not just the power unit. The aero doesn't work. They trimmed the car out for wet weather running. It didn't rain. Just anything that could go wrong is going wrong for Ferrari. And if my surname was Binotto, I would be very, very unhappy.
Well, we heard during the race, and we saw, of course, during Charles' pit stop, the pneumatic pressure being changed by the mechanics. What does that mean for the engine? What are they actually doing there? Okay,
it's going right. If it's what I think it is, you're going deep inside the valve train of the engine. So in your normal car, you've got the valves at the top of the cylinder head that opens it, the exhaust and the fuel in, and you get that mixture in. So those haven't got springs on anymore. It's pneumatic, so there's a little air spring. And if you've got an air leak in there, you'll start to lose performance. So you have to top up the air bottle sometimes.
Just keep topping it up, Ferrari.
Yeah, and it was noticeable. They topped it up and Leclerc came back out and was suddenly really quick again. So I think he was losing pace through that pit stop, and it was just. But the thing is, well, they've got reliability issues, they've got performance issues. The only thing that is performing is Charles Leclerc. Actually, one of their drivers isn't performing particularly well, which is Sebastian Vettel. The sooner they change something drastic for that team, the better. Unfortunately, the homologation regulations mean they can't change very much ahead of next season. This is a long, difficult period for Ferrari, and when they had those troubles, I saw Carlos Sainz put his head in his hands because he's got to deal with all of this.
Interesting stuff from Sam, and of course, as he points out, it's not just the car that isn't performing at the level that we expect. Ferrari as a team are not performing at the level that we expect either. Mistakes being made in the pit stops. Mistakes being made from a strategic perspective, if indeed the decisions are even being made from a strategic perspective. It seems the drivers almost being sort of left out on the track to fend for themselves.
It never rains, but it's pours.
Yeah.
And for Ferrari at the moment, they're scrapping, and they're trying to look for any way to make life better for themselves. And when you maybe scrap, you make more mistakes. And that's what's happening at the moment. The drivers are clearly frustrated. Sebastian's been frustrated all year, but the fact that Charles started to get frustrated is very important.
Well, you hear from Charles now when you talk to him post-race or even earlier on in the weekend, and it's as you say, it's frustration. It's almost bubbling over into anger and aggression with him. With Seb, there was almost an element of resignation. But now he too, they're starting to get really annoyed with the situation because it's showing no sign of turning the corner.
There was a point in qualifying where Charles was slower than George Russell. Last year, he was 4 seconds quicker than him. Like, that's just not acceptable for Ferrari to have had that swing in performance. And it's not a surprise that the drivers are getting frustrated.
And of course, next up, it's Monza. Italy expects. We were talking earlier about the headlines being written. You can imagine what the newspapers, what Gazzetta dello Sport will say in the morning, what the Italian nation will read over their morning espresso, and it's not going to be pretty.
It's going to make for grim reading, and the trouble is Ferrari fans demand results, and I don't think they're going to be able to deliver that in Monza. I think it's going to be slightly better because I think the weather's going to be warmer, but I think overall they're going to be struggling. I think we're still going to be talking about, are they going to get a Q1? We're still going to be talking about, can they score points this weekend? And that, for a team like Ferrari, just isn't acceptable.
And of course, again, as Sam pointed out, this isn't just an issue for 2020.
No, and the trouble there is that they can make gains and they can make improvements, but they're so small because of the limited nature of the rules, because they wanted to keep the cost down.
Yeah.
And obviously by not being able to make those big steps, which they need to do, because just look at the engine versus the other engines, just look at that car versus the other cars. They need to make sweeping changes, and they're just not able to do that, which means the pain is in it for the long haul.
I'm going to say that there is a silver lining
Where's that?
to this dark cloud. And that is, of course, that the lower down the championship you finish, the more wind tunnel time you get. And theoretically, if this season goes in the skip as badly as it looks like it's going for Ferrari, they will at least get the benefit of more wind tunnel time out of it.
They will. And then if that is the case, they've got to make the best of it, and they've got to make sure that they are set up then for 2022, because there can be no mistakes in 2022.
Fascinating stuff. As we said, Ferrari were expecting a tough weekend. Nobody, not us, definitely not them, expected it to be quite this bad. They will be praying things will be better in Monza. Might not work out that way. Thanks for tuning in, folks. From Lawrence, from me, that's it. We'll see you in Italy.